Legal pot. Her husband spent 4 years in a U.S. prison for selling cannabis seeds internationally out of his Vancouver store. And their cannabis culture boutiques were shut down by police earlier this year. The couple pled guilty to cannabis charges. Of course, I'm talking about Jody Emery. She now runs a coffee shop called Jody's Joint, and that's where she's coming from. Jody, you fought for years to get to this day. It certainly came with a hefty personal price. Is this a bittersweet victory for you and Mark?
So it's very bittersweet. The headline and the symbolism of legalization is fantastic. It will inspire people around the world. But for me and so many others, we're not legalized yet. We still have criminal records. People are still losing their jobs and their kids and facing all sorts of discrimination and stigma, even from their doctors. So we have all sorts of issues of unfairness and issues of civil liberties to address. But ultimately, yes, the headline is fantastic. And for the many activists before my time who have put in decades of work, it's a great victory for them, too.
Yeah, I know. I guess there's no doubt, really, that the multi-billion-dollar producers are standing on the shoulders of activists. And as you point out, criminal records now prevent you from participating in the process. It doesn't even sound like that's going to change anytime soon, does it?
No, and listening to Bill Blair, it sounds like the government is still determined to punish and exclude the pioneers and prohibition victims who made all of this possible. Crime should only be a crime if there's a victim and an aggressor. If you have rape or assault or theft or murder, these are crimes with victims and aggressors. But cannabis, when it comes to consensual, peaceful adult transactions, even selling it to someone who wants to buy it, there's no force, there's no coercion, there's no victim, there should be no crime. So for myself, with my trafficking record and all of the dispensary employees in the last couple of years, we were excluded in many ways from not just the cannabis industry, but many other job opportunities. So that is why I've launched this new coffee shop with the hope we can be an Amsterdam-style experience where you can access cannabis and coffee as an adult and enjoy it together in a safe space.
I knew you weren't going to give up yet, Jody, so I can see where you're going with this. But step back a bit and just look at what you saw and read and heard today from your network. I mean, is today's retail rollout the best we might have expected, given that we're still very early on in getting into this as the second country on the planet to do it?
Well, again, it's a big move symbolically, but when you actually talk to the lawyers and look at the laws and regulations at every level, we have more prohibitions and restrictions than ever before. There are more punishments available and harsher sentences. And as we saw, the dispensaries and the advocates who created this industry were arrested and locked out and locked up. Meanwhile, Airbnb and Uber, these disruptors and lawbreakers, got regulated into existence like dispensaries had hoped to be. But instead, the government is using force and coercion themselves to shut down these entrepreneurs, as peaceful and nonviolent as they are, and to force people to go to government-approved shops instead and pay prohibition-inflated prices with extra taxes on top and the threat of arrest if you dare try to provide access to all of the cannabis that was growing before. Legalization doesn't legalize any of the existing industry or cannabis or BC bud. That's why you're going to see supply shortages in the legal industry. But trust me, the supply is there to meet the demand. The government just hasn't legalized it yet.
Interesting. All right, Jody, always interesting to get your perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Don.